The temperature of the room has crept up 2 degrees, or maybe it's just you. A colleague 2 seats away is finishing a sentence about quarterly numbers, and you hear the shape of their words without the meaning. Nods ripple around the table. Then silence tilts toward you. Your turn. And the thought you had polished for the last 20 minutes, the one that felt so sharp and certain, is gone, replaced by a smooth, humming blankness. You open your mouth and hear yourself say something defensive and vague, something that sounds like a question, and the moment passes. You know this experience. The strange part is not that you forgot what you wanted to say. It's that you also forgot what the person before you just said, even though you were sitting there, looking right at them, the whole time. If someone asked you to summarize their point, you couldn't. Your memory of the last 5 minutes is a hole shaped exactly like the conversation. Psychologists have a name for this hole. It's called the next-in-line effect, and it was discovered in a slightly strange laboratory setting in the early 1970s. A researcher named Malcolm Brenner had people sit in a circle and take turns reading words aloud. Each person read one word, then the next person read the next word, around the room, again and again. At the end, everyone was tested on how many words they could remember. The words each person said themselves, remembered unusually well. The words the next person said, the one who followed them, also remembered well, the researchers were surprised to find, because that person was the mirror of your own turn, and you were likely still rehearsing your response. But the words of the person who spoke just before you, the one whose turn you were anxiously watching approach, almost completely forgotten. The effect was so strong and so consistent that it earned its own name, and it explains a great deal more than a laboratory word game. Why does your brain do this, erase the person directly before you? The answer begins with a simple fact about attention. You have only one stream of it, and it moves like a spotlight. When your turn is approaching, that spotlight is not on the speaker in front of you. It's on the future, on yourself, on the seconds ahead when you will be exposed. You are not listening to them. You are rehearsing, simulating, and quietly panicking. And your memory did not fail you. It simply recorded what you were thinking about, and you were thinking about yourself. There's a deeper layer here, and it makes the effect feel almost unfair. The person speaking before you is not just the last thing you heard. They are also a cue, a signal, a trigger. Their turn ending means your turn beginning, so their voice becomes a kind of alarm bell in your brain. You don't process their content because their content is the background music to your own impending performance. In experiment after experiment, the same pattern holds. When people anticipate speaking, their memory for the preceding speaker drops by a large margin, while their memory for their own words and the words that follow spikes. But here is where the classic experiment and your daily life diverge. In the lab, people read single isolated words. In your life, you're processing ideas, arguments, stories, numbers, tensions around a table. The stakes are higher, the content is richer, and the amnesia feels more catastrophic. You didn't just forget a word. You forgot a person's entire position, and you have to respond to it, or pretend you heard it, or desperately ask for clarification and reveal that you were elsewhere. This points to something uncomfortable about conversation itself. Most of the time, when you're in a group, you are not actually listening. You are waiting. You're building your response line by line, waiting for the exact millisecond when the other person's mouth stops moving, so you can deploy your own words. The moment they stop, you leap. And if you've ever had the experience of being mid-sentence and realizing you've already forgotten the point you wanted to make, you now know why. The next-in-line effect is not just about the person before you. It's about the enormous cognitive cost of holding your own thought in working memory while simultaneously simulating the future. Your working memory has a limited capacity, roughly 3 to 4 chunks of information at once. Preparing a response uses up those chunks. The tone you want to strike, the point you want to land, the example you want to use, the worry that it's a stupid point, all of it occupies the stage. There is simply no room left for the person who is actually speaking. Something has to give, and it's the person whose turn precedes yours. The brain sacrifices the past to protect the future. But the next in-line effect has a limit, and knowing that limit can change how you move through meetings, classrooms, and dinner parties. The effect is strongest when your turn is imminent and when you are actively rehearsing. When there's no rehearsal, when you genuinely don't care about your upcoming turn, or when the distance between you and the speaker is large, memory returns to normal. The effect is not a permanent flaw in your memory. It's a state you enter, and it's a state you can exit. How do you exit it? There's a reason that many people in high-stakes groups, professors in seminars, surgeons in operating rooms, diplomats at tables, develop a habit of writing things down. The notebook or phone screen is not for archiving. It's an external working memory. When you write, you offload the rehearsal, and your internal attention is freed to actually process the person speaking. Suddenly, you can remember what they said, and you can respond to it, because your response no longer needs to live in your head. It lives on the page. One more wrinkle makes this effect worse for some people than others, and it's worth being honest about. The next inline effect predicts that whatever you say, once you're in the spotlight, will feel better remembered by you than it actually was. You experience your own delivery, your own words, your own clever point from the inside. You think you nailed it. Everyone else who was busy being next in line themselves barely processed a word. A meeting is not a shared experience. It's a sequence of overlapping moments of private amnesia. So the next time you're in a meeting and someone finishes speaking and your mind is blank, don't assume you were rude or broken. You were doing something your brain considers more urgent. You were rehearsing your own survival. And that rehearsal, ironically, is exactly what makes the person before you disappear from memory. You can't listen and rehearse at the same time because attention is singular and preparation feels more important than comprehension. The solution isn't to try harder to listen. It's to change what you're rehearsing. Force your summary of the previous speaker's point into words while they are still talking, and make that summary, not your upcoming performance, the thing you hold in mind. The person before you finishes, and you're holding their idea, not your own. Then respond, let the summary lead, and find that your own thinking emerges downstream of their point. There is a final thought that lingers after all the experiments are done. The next inline effect reveals that your social anxiety is not a flaw in your courage. It's a flaw in your attention's architecture. When you fear your turn, you reach for the future, and the future empties the present. The person speaking to you is the price you pay for your worry. And when you learn to pay attention instead, the anxiety and the amnesia tend to leave together. Not because you've become braver, but because you've finally understood where your mind was going all along. It was going where all worried minds go, forward, into a moment that hasn't arrived yet, leaving the room around you, and the people in it and their words, to vanish like they were never spoken at all.